Long days, heavy on the mind. Still laugh loud, still learn, still grind. We got questions that the world don't teach. So we pull up to the mic, let the heart just reach. Hard topics, but the truth we speak. Oh yeah. Black men speak.
Well, welcome to Black Men Speak, a podcast that highlights ordinary Black men doing extraordinary things. I am your host, Keith Dent. And before we get started today, just a shout out to all the moms out there. No matter what type of mom you are, stepmom, foster mom, single mom, mom with a blended family, all of those moms out there. And so this is very pertinent today because, you know, moms are very great at this. But for some Black men out there, there's something missing in the lives of a lot of Black men. It's not money. It's not opportunity. It's not even always mentorship. It's something much simpler and somehow much harder to talk about. Touch. Not violence, not aggression, not competition, but safe, intentional human touch. Because the truth is, there are Black men walking around right now who haven't experienced real platonic touch in years. Not a hug, not a hand on the shoulder, not even a moment of physical reassurance. And what our guest today, Aaron Johnson, introduces us is a term that hits like a punch to the chest. Chronically undertouched. That's not just poetic, it's real condition with real consequences. Isolation, depression, disconnection, a feeling of being unseen, even when you're surrounded by people. Aaron shares stories of young men who went years without meaningful touch. And it forces us to ask a hard question. What does that do to a man's spirit? Because we've been taught how to dap each other, but how not to hold space. We've been taught how to compete, but not how to connect. In a culture where Black men are often always seen through the lens of strength, toughness, or even threat, tenderness becomes taboo. But Aaron flips the narrative. He says something powerful, that touch, real intentional platonic touch, is not soft, it's life-saving. Through his work with the Chronically Undertouched Project, he's creating spaces where Black men can reconnect with themselves, with each other, and with something we've been denied for far too long: safe closeness. Listening, singing, being present, even something as simple as a radical as a hug. So today's conversation isn't just about touch, it's about healing, redefining masculinity, and it's about asking. So before we get into our conversation today, I just want to mention Aaron. Aaron is a public speaker, facilitator, filmmaker, and touch activist focused on the emotional and relational lives of Black men, and is the founder of the Chronically Undertouched Project and co-founder of Holistic Resistance and Grief to Action. His work supports Black men in moving from a lack of platonic touch toward balance, creating spaces rooted in tenderness, care, and deep listening across diverse identities and experiences. Based in the Mojave Desert, Aaron also creates films, retreats, and land-based healing spaces that challenge harmful stereotypes and center softness, intimacy, and the collective liberation. Now that is certainly a mouthful, and I just can't wait to talk to him today. So, Aaron, welcome to the Black Men Speak podcast.
It's good to be here. So good to be here with you.
Yeah. So let's get at it. And I was gonna bring in the TED Talk, but I want people to find it, to discover it themselves. But you shared that some men go years without meaningful touch. So what was the moment that made you realize that this is kind of a rare thing? Oh, and I'm sorry, that it wasn't rare, that it's really a widespread issue that you needed to, I guess, explore further.
This goes into my looking for support. I thought, oh, I'll Google and look and see if I can find some other brothers that have been out here helping a brother come from, chronically undertouched state to a more balanced touch state. And I figured it'd be some book or workshop or someone has been thinking about this I could find it on Google. And I think when I started looking with the pressure of a young man that desperately needed my support, the level of crickets that came up was eerie. And this felt, when I kind of noticed it on Google, I reflected on my entire life. And you know what? I grew up and I saw Michael Jordan backwards dunking on folks. I saw Mike Tyson knocking folks out. I have, all these examples of Black athleticism and dominance, which there's nothing wrong with being athletic, but I saw, wow, what an absence of tender behavior, modeled, celebrated, centered for me. And so when I started to reflect, I was like, snap, this is something that's beyond my problem right now with this brother here. And I don't want to move past this problem without trying to really answer the question, because it felt like one of the most nourishing things I did to myself previously before this brother's mentoring needed support around this. That I was like, it was so challenging for me to find my own touch plan. And I was really gifted and blessed with some people around me that really hold space. But that knowings that I can't just move on with my life or this mentorship program unless we really spend some time thinking about it. So I could tell by the lack of resources that was available and how easeful the violence, aggression, hypersexualization of Black bodies was so readily available. So that contrast was the first step of like, this is something that is a problem for the whole United States.
And I guess because that's a word that really hasn't been used before, like undertouch. So for people that are listening or will listen, what does that mean? If you can.
Right. So there's probably numbers, the human body needs 4 or 5 hugs a day. All those little posts and research is done. But what we find is that we find this as a theme. Unfortunately, anyone in a more civilized or advanced culture, as we get full of our lives, we actually are, as a culture outside of Black men, are just under touch. But what we're referring to is the amount of time we have skin, hands, other human beings in contact with us in a nourishing or supportive and within a consent environment where we can get that nourishment. And there's a famous study, I believe it was during World War II, where they had children that was an orphanage that were not being held, and how they died. Like literally their heart stopped beating because they lacked physical contact. And so there's been now a bunch of research on how much the human body needs contact with the earth and contact with other people. But on a practical sense, we're referring to someone that has gone, we'll just use a 12-month period of time. 12-month period of time, and they've gotten less than 20 minutes of sustained, thoughtful, platonic holding on their body, being held, or any kind of like things that nourish the body. So contact with the earth qualifies for that. So there's that would roughly give you a sense of being chronically, and this is extreme cases, and unfortunately most of us, especially brothers, are on the extreme level. We have extreme levels of lack of platonic touch. And so for us, that number being less than 50 hours a year is, you're still in a chronic state. Like that's not near enough hours of touch and in a whole year. And so what we're trying to do, we don't really track numbers aggressively in our work. Right. We try and get numbers up. So someone be like, I got 15 minutes touch this week. I got 20 minutes touch. I'm feeling great. I got 20 minutes. All I can handle is 20 minutes of good platonic touch early on. So it's like anything else. So for us, if you're in a chronic undertouched state, what it means is that your nervous system, your body is in a desperate state of needing human touch, and it does not even know how to reach for it anymore, or it's atrophied to the point that it feels like a foreign experience to receive. And so that kind of part of the brain that as a child we reach for a touch a lot, when that's kind of deteriorated enough that we don't even reach for it anymore, that's signs of a chronic situation. And oftentimes our nervous systems are also response to it. We're depressed constantly. We're on caffeine to pick us up. Our nervous system is having all kinds of implications. It could be other factors, but touch is oftentimes in the equation of lacking thereof, and usually it's a chronic situation. So for me, I think of it chronic as like if you feel undernourished, like being thirsty, you feel a little bit of thirsty, you're already dehydrated. It's like if you feel a little bit, you're probably behind. If you feel like I could use a little, you're probably many hours behind. So unfortunately, big portion of our population, particularly Black men, are somewhere on the spectrum of chronic.
Okay.
Rarely do we arrive to a place of being in balance. And balance, we get a brother that's in a balanced touch state. He's receiving in our programs a comfort touch plan of human time, almost 3 to 4 hours a week of sustained human time. And that's not counting time with pets. It's not counting time walking barefoot on the earth. It's not counting time holding trees and rocks and clay. It's not counting all, just human time. We're talking about 3 hours a week. We found brothers really being in a place of like, I'm feeling better. I'm feeling, and this is like over a period of months before they're like, man, I could feel different. And in that 3 hours, I would say at least 30 minutes of, and it's funny to say this, but Black men holding Black men, because that's like the golden, that's like you've arrived when
That's the
Black
golden.
man, when you get a Black man can hold another Black man's hand and goes, I want to hear you today. I want to hold your hand or hold your body or be in contact with you as you share your day on a regular basis. When you get a portion of your 3 hours per week of a brother can help space with that's a whole different pocket that can't be filled by other partners and other folks where Black men fill that pocket. And we want that to grow tremendously. We find that's still one of the rarest and more difficult things to arrange in America is for Black men to show up with attention to hear and hold each other. So that's the part that feels more rare. Nonetheless, 3 hours of human to human contact, male, female, all the things. And I would say in that at least half hour of a Black man to an hour of another Black man saying, I want to hold your hand. I want to hear you process, grieve, celebrate, whatever it is. I'm here to hear. I have attention for you. That part. So that's ideal. We would get that up to multiple hours a week as well. But right now we find that 45 minutes, 30 minutes is like we're crushing. We're crushing.
That's golden. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hold that thought because I do want to hear more about that. But I wanted kind of a follow-up question since we are now kind of a culture of isolationism because of social media, COVID, all those factors, what, I guess with other ethnicities, and I don't know if a study's broken down that way, but what is the average amount of touch that we have as a whole, just to see how big a deficit that we have as Black men
for like white folks or non-Black folks touch?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't have an exact number. Touch Matters breaks down America being on the lower end, dangerously low end of touch. But if I was looking at statistics on Touch Matters, I think it's something like I can't remember the actual number, but I want to say it's much higher than 3 hours a week. I mean, even in a very broken culture of America, white folks, non-PGM folks that aren't dealing with class has a lot to do with it. Lower income folks have less access to safe touch, so on and so forth. But the ratio is, from my micro environment observation, when I work with every other population outside of Black men, it is a scary difference. The average person I work with outside of, people come to me, I'm cranking on touch, not a Black man, but I'm going to touch. They're getting 10 times the touch of Black men of every population. And not only are they getting more touch, I would say is that it's safer for them to receive it. So say, for example, if I'm a white woman, 35 years old, I live in Oregon, I go to festivals all the time, I get body work, I can walk holding my other friend's hand, I can cuddle, and I can do a lot more contact. And it's safer in my environment and their environment than it would be for a Black man to cultivate a similar culture. So not only do we notice that there's a massive difference, I want to say the average white body person in more liberal states, I'm talking about Missouri, but more like, liberal environments where people aren't tracking like queerness as much, we're seeing so much more touch. I want to say their hours are easily 10 hours easy in a given week, sometimes up to 20. And they're still feeling like, I'm still feeling undernourished, I'm feeling distracted from. They're still working out. They're working out like kind of like some small fixes help them get access to it. But what they also not speak to is how safe they feel receiving it, how untaboo it is. So it's also I could feel the safety difference is also dramatic. The safety for a cis straight Black man specifically to reach for safe, platonic, tender touch, it feels risky. He feels like he might be attacked, ostracized, or accused of misbehaving in so many ways. So I don't have like numbers, But in my
Right.
tight group of like maybe 100 people I've worked with over the last year, it's dramatically different.
Okay. So, because you said we have a challenge around feeling safe or feeling it's a risk. So I would assume there's some walls you have to break down before they can even reach for another brother's hand. So what are some of the walls that you break down in the project to get people to feel comfortable to take the risk?
Yeah, I think one of the things that people are confused about is they feel like I'm trying to make them gay or their homophobia is at risk. They even know they had some homophobia feelings in their body. That this is something about their sexual orientation and that this is not about their humanity. So one of the first things that I have to kind of just get ahead of, have a conversation about, is recognizing this has nothing to do with their sexual orientation. This has more to do with their actual nervous system and with their body needs, regardless of who they're sexually attracted to. This has nothing to do with that. The other piece is time. Um, Especially folks that are surviving poverty, they're working multiple jobs. They're trying to keep their lights on. They're trying to feed their children. They're trying to keep out of whatever kind of legal job. They're in a place of survival. When you're in a place of survival, this almost feels like a extra. It feels like something I can totally kick down the road. I'll get to it. It's not critical to my survival and my thrival. And so there's a lot of that pieces because we're very class aware and constantly track classism in our work of oftentimes these healing massage retreats in Puerto Rico or Hawaii. They're all very much premium prices that only wealthy or upper middle class or very financially established folks can attend. And so for us, when we're working with folks that are surviving poverty, we notice that it takes time to invest in this practice and to believe in its impact over long and short-term benefits. Another piece is violence. A lot of people have, very little exposure to platonic and safe touch. They have a huge, huge body memory of fighting, being arrested, being in conflict. They have so many more memories of fighting each other. Like there's more likely that most people that I work with are more likely have had either knocked out or have been knocked out or been in a fist fight with a black man growing up than they have been in a kind of platonic, thoughtful hold. So they have a memory of violence. So we have to kind of cough up and go, this brother here that I'm opening my tender self to is not going to attack me. I have to remind myself this brother from right in front of me is actually looking at me with this beautiful, thoughtful, village, ancestral love. That could be overwhelming, especially if my father didn't love me properly or if my father didn't show emotions towards me, but kind of show me practical love, or if my whole entire community, the best way to survive was to be tough enough to defend yourself at will. If that's the default, one of my biggest challenges in my labor, as I talked about early on, it's some big work, is I'm having to just gently rewrite, encourage, and bring them into saying there's another way we get to be with each other. And that's not necessarily being weak. That's another thing that comes up to attach to this kind of cluster of barriers is I ain't weak. I ain't soft. I am strong. And it's all true, but we have that flipped. It is much easier for me to bench 225 pounds and the hard work gets to it than for me to sit and hold your hand for 35 minutes and listen to you. It is videos. You can go online and get videos of how to get to your bench, what to eat, the proteins, what to take. But when it comes to how to get my emotional self safe enough to reach over and hold your hand for half an hour and hear your emotions, oh my goodness, we don't have near enough videos. I mean, there's thousands. If you want to know how to get your chest, you can break down every part of your pectoral muscle. There's no one breaking down outside of a handful of folks, me being right now in the front of that pack, unfortunately, of how do we break down the nuances of our defense systems. It's been us surviving the normalized violent culture of America on our bodies. And that's something that finds it very unique. And I talk to therapists and mental health specialists, and everyone's like surprised at this topic. It's like it surprises them. It breaks my heart how surprising this practical human thing is to most people I talk to. And I've been traveling the country doing this for the last almost 10 years, particularly the last 3 years aggressively. So that's the part that I have to overcome when I'm working with these brothers is every collection of brothers is slightly different. It's a slightly different kind of a violent experience to a homophobia experience to a class issue. It's so nuanced. Every 10, 8 brothers is a whole new surprise of what they need to arrive. And one of the things that you'll hear me say a lot in the film and in a lot of the shares, like, you don't have to touch anyone. You just be here in the room with me. You almost see the brothers relax, like, oh, I ain't gonna hug nobody. Whoo! Like, I was about to wrap the room, but
Wow.
you hear me say this a lot. You hear me say this a lot. You don't have to touch anybody. You get to choose when it's good for you. And so that part is another thing of me not forcing brothers to go beyond their nervous system,
Right.
but at the same time inviting them to push themselves to grow.
That is just so fascinating to me because, I mean, and yeah, if there were sisters in the room, of course, you know, there would be no what. Oh yeah, I mean, it's like, oh good, I've been waiting to hold her hand for a couple of minutes. But it really goes what you talk about more, and I love you to explain a little bit more. Is that it's how we've been socialized in the whole black brute, so to speak, and it's something that's now kind of subtly, I guess, ingrained. It's not that out in the open. So how does that societal label of black brute come into play for brothers?
You know, the black brute narrative has had some iterations. If we can give a quick history, you know, coming out of slavery, the white population was trying to figure out a way to justify violence towards black people. Like, how do we justify controlling them, being violent? And so they concocted this idea that black men and black community as a whole, but they you saw this like focus on the threat of the black male body, and you see the images, the stories, the accusations, the threat in which the white population, aka the white men in time, built this story that we need to create an enemy, and the black brute story started to emerge, right? So we saw that right post slavery and Reconstruction, we saw this threat structure, and once they had an opportunity to then say, well, this black man is accused of rape, you'll see the newspapers perpetuate the social media, the technology of its time to perpetuate and kind of draw a vivid picture for the mainstream culture to separate ourselves from black community. And they used the white woman as the pawn at the time, and used a black man as the kind of the victim of this narrative. You know, they were not framed as a victim at the time, and that embedded itself not only in the white ecosystem and nervous system, but it embedded itself in also black bodies. And so we jump, 100 years later, and we have black exploitation films. You'll see black folks making these really kind of powerful action, but you'll see this black brute narrative of this hyper sexualized black male come to surface. And oftentimes you'll have the same elements that were described in that kind of early birthing post-slavery and Reconstruction of black brute fall right into the black exploitation films. You can hardly find a lot of black exploitation films today, and kind of the original ones. There's a whole era of we're trying to empower ourselves called the black exploitation films, and we kind of look at it kind of like entertainment, but what it was is kind of the black brute immersion itself in the modern day culture, right? And you might want to take another jump, and I would say that big portions of hip hop. I love hip hop; it's an important part of our culture. But we saw an unchecked version of the black brute emerge itself and get funded. You understand? It's a cocktail of hip hop wasn't necessarily initially black brute centered, but there's a way that once it started getting funded, the white hands wanted to fund. No surprise, the hypersexualized, the high muscled, the high aggression, the violent, drug addicted. That's where the money that fits right into America's MO of being able to fund that narrative. So we saw this, and hip hop is also in parallel to cinema and modern day Hollywood, to pornography as we know it. All these parallel universes were getting funding around perpetuating a very, very similar image of the black brute. And this was happening, go to the 90s, now early 2000s to the present day. You see then black folks not quite consciously knowing how much they're embodying and celebrating the black brute. And so it sets us up for our modern day culture today to have an unfortunately rarely checked, rarely corrected image and story of the Black brute that really defines a big portion, I would say too big of a portion, of the Black male nervous system today. So that when you bring in my work on tenderness, it lands like a grenade. It lands like an explosive experience when really it should be almost like a, want some water? Want some touch? Let's go for a walk. It should not be dramatic at all. No one out here is like, I don't want to go for walks, man. Walks are scary. Walk is not, it's not even a big deal. I don't drink water. Water is scary. But yet we look at holding and touching very similar. It's like a panic. It's a panic around me holding your hand. So this is a human activity, because the Black narrative is eclipsed so much of us, that when I and others raise their hand on tenderness, it shocks the system. And that's proof of how unchecked this narrative has been since post-slavery to right now. And that's eerie to me as a person that's living in this Black body. It's eerie how much I don't see a bigger conversation in our culture. We have flashpoints when something horrific happens, where a Black man, kills multiple folks in a household. We talk about it for a moment, but don't understand this is a systemic issue that's been fueled and funded and designed by a culture that is taking home billions of dollars on the backs of this fake narrative. And so I think that once we can understand that's real, I think we really have real examinations of what it means to celebrate this repair and rebuild of the Black male nervous system from a tender space, which is rarely talked about.
Yeah, fascinating work. So over the course of the workshops that you've offered around being under touch, what would you say was the biggest thing that has surprised you about your work?
Is despite all the complexity and fear around some of the basis of my work, that Black men are so invested in being in village that they are like, I'm nervous, I'm uncomfortable, but man, I want to be in nonviolent village with my fellow brothers. There's nothing I want more than to reach over and say, this brother has my back. It's the level of love we have for each other. And I grew up with two brothers I love to this day. We've loved each other through our entire lives. I am not unfamiliar with Black male love for each other and family. My dad loved me, good with all the men in my family growing up, which is a gift. And I'm still surprised when I go into the world, the level of like, I want to be in village with each other. And I lack that exposure. Church sometimes can be a supplement for some people, but even there, it limits a whole lot of ourselves, because church has such a, I'm a PK, preacher's kid, so I'm quite aware of how this ecosystem works. I'm not here to like throwing rocks at the church. The church plays an important role, but there's a way that it is hard for us to look at the graphic details of our nervous system and the candor of our experience, our feelings, our thoughts, our fantasies, without feeling like we're guilty of something. Like the be ourselves without being in shame is a rare thing. And so I think the amount of brothers that want to be in village where they can show themselves emotionally, tenderly, vulnerably, without shame or judgment being the first hammer that lands on their nervous system, on their bodies, is such a desire, an amount of desire that's been surprising to me. And that's been one of the North Stars that keeps me getting up and investing and moving this work, is that there is a undercurrent and a deep desire of Black men's fellowship and connection, independent of institutions similar to the church or corporate business and world, but kind of a fourth space where we can show up and say, let's hold each other thoughtfully accountable. No one can come through here and be reckless, but accountably held in village is such a undercurrent. That surprised me and has inspired me. I think another one is also in my film, there's probably like three different class, wealthy, Stanford educated to, I don't know where my next meal's coming from, and I don't know if I have a house when I get home, in the same room going, I'm down to see you. I'm down to be in presence with you. I'm down to figure out how we can find more common ground than not. And I don't oftentimes see, cultural, sexual orientation, class, village building happening at the same time. And age. We have brothers as old as 80, 85 in the group and young as 21 in the group. So there's loving that spectrum of age as well, being present and folks saying, I'm going to jump across all these different lines in hopes to have village with you. And that has been wow for me.
Yeah, I found that fascinating also in the movie, because I did notice or did see that there was it wasn't just homogenous male that was in the room. There are a lot of different men with, as far as their class, and then also sexual orientation. And so did that did that make you feel like, oh, I really have something here that can be explored nationally?
Yeah, I think host the event. Going into that event, I'm like, man, I might have made a mistake, man. I could have got it all in the same age, same class. This is going to be. There's a little bit. I had a lot of like concern that maybe I
Okay.
put the queer brothers at risk. I put the straight brothers
Mm.
at risk. I put the poor brothers at risk. I put the wealthy at risk. And on this side of it, we're talking about years after that first workshop. It was one of the best choices I've made. There's a way that um, this is not only a national conversation, but it's one of those practices that I have seen, but also believe and almost have this clear knowing that if this work is even in a small percentage applied to most Black ecosystems, churches, communities, neighborhoods, families, that people will live that would otherwise be dead in the grave if they didn't actually participate in this material. I look at this, and maybe I'm a little ambitious here because I'm kind of out of the source here, but I think of whoever invented CPR. The idea is someone has a heart attack, you lay them on their back and you press in their chest and you blow in their mouth and you press in their chest until support comes. I don't know how many lives have been saved since that concept was made, but that person has, by developing this system, has developed a way that people are now breathing and alive because we kind of know the Heimlich remover. We kind of know how to push people. I thought this is the emotional Heimlich remover of Black ecosystems, that this is the canary in the kind of mine of when this is happening well, we find that a whole lot of other things are happening really well within the Black community. It's almost a clear indicator of things are not going well when this violent material is replacing our tender parts of ourselves. And so not only do I feel it's a national conversation, I feel like it is a life-saving act to bring this level. I don't know how many brothers have been dead in the grave because they're functioning on a nervous system that has been
Mm.
led and shaped by the Black brute narrative and invested in by that narrative as well. So that to me is something that also motivates me as well.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you mentioned a lot about the nervous system and things of that matter. So what, by being in this, I guess, if you want to program the Undertouched Project, what are some of the shifts psychologically and then emotionally happen to these men after a period of being in the program?
One of the things I find, and I want to be careful when I say this part because this program is not a relationship coaching or get
Right.
more women kind of a program. And it's been noticeable how people said, my goodness, my marriage, my relationship is so much better now that I'm not putting my partner as the only touch experience that they're supposed to take care of 25 years of deficit touch, and they're supposed to take care of my current needs, and they're supposed to do all this thing. And I just put all this pressure on my relationships that I didn't even know I was doing. It was like it was their job to fix my, one of the questions we asked brothers early on in this work, we say, can you just get a piece of paper out and we'll list what's your touch plan? And most brothers start out, it's kind of a setup a little bit, but not necessarily. They go, okay, my girlfriend or my wife, excuse me, and they stop talking. That's it. They're done. That's my touch plan. My part. That's it. They're gonna suffice all of my touch plans. They cover it all. And so one of the things we do that exercise for is that we do the same question at the end of our program and say, what is your touch plan? Like, where do you receive touch from? Where do you look for touch nourishment from? And we always encourage them to put their partner, whoever their primary partner is, at the last of that list. Just like put them at not that they're less valuable, but they're not carrying that brunt of that load. And they talk about, well, my walking the earth with barefoot is one of them. This brother over here lives in my neighborhood. I do a touch plan with him every day. We do some like moving together, we walk together, and we sit with hands together. Then we have this kind of more physical sessions we do where I get to grieve. I have a grief touch experience. Now I have my pet. When I touch my dog and my animals, I'm touching with some intention of nourishment. And they get all the way down there. Man, I got a buffet of touch. What we see is that relationships, friendships, platonic, professional, all of them, we've seen them improve. We've seen them get clear about boundaries. A lot of Black men are so told they're the predator, they don't even realize how many times they've been violated, how many times they've been touched and they didn't want to be touched, and how they felt afraid to raise their hand because they were afraid that they would be reversed as the predator. There are so many brothers who have been like, yeah, I was 17 years old and a person that was in their 30s took sexual advantage of me, but I didn't say anything because I was a 6 foot tall plus Black man. If I would have said something, that white bodied woman would just say he tried to rape me and I'll be in jail, or he tried to assault me, and no one would believe that she was a predator on me as a black man or that black body. So we see folks going realizing that they've been violated and didn't even know it or identify it as violation because they thought I can't be violated because I didn't even know what boundaries were for my body, right? I didn't even know I could say, hey, don't touch me. I don't have consent on that. They didn't even know that. They're like, I'm fine. I'm good. I've been grabbed and groped, but I never say anything. I didn't even know that was a hurt that could be acknowledged. So boundaries, touch boundaries of what touch is extractive, what touch is actually open. And then have language. A lot of the brothers we work with don't have words. They don't even know how to explain like what happens in your body when I hold your hand. Like, what do you feel in your body? Describe how your body feels when you're receiving it. So it's a language to speak about the inner workings of touch pleasure that's outside of arousal, outside of, and it might be even adjacent to or close to, but it's not I'm aroused or I'm not. It's like, I feel like I want to cry right now. I'm not even sure where that came from. Oh, I feel like this buzziness in my chest. I feel, so language to describe and to notice what's happening inside the body. And one of the other pieces too is that it's not everybody, but there's a big portion of I would say about 60% of brothers I work with have fear or discomfort. It starts as a word of discomfort about being in the forest or nature or being in kind of wilderness environments. They're like, no, I ain't trying to go camping. I like to be in a hotel. Give me safety. They don't track that we have a lineage of history of being forced to work on land and being lynched in forests, and being in nature is not necessarily a safe place for black bodies. So what we find is that when we start seeing this trauma story come up, is that we've seen almost everybody in our program feel safer in nature. Like, oh my God, I never actually farmed or walked out and been out camping or been out with these big old trees or been out in nature for long. A new relationship, a rehealing, a reconnection with the earth that says, this is not an indicator of slavery that I work here. I choose to put my hands on the earth here. I choose to build the earth. And so we see this massive rebuilding, reorganizing, building a new relationship with nature on an intimate level, on a recreational level, on a family level. And I think too, we have this community singing structure. We look at music as something to be reclaimed for everybody to sing. And so we're seeing like, oh, now I can feel the vibrations of what it means to sing and feel the vibrations and intimacy of our voices. So there's a lot of more awareness and sensitivity to the power of vulnerable behavior around each other, right? Like vulnerable behavior feeling normal. I don't know how to describe it unless you've been there. I'm so glad it's a film, so you can kind of at least sometimes visualize some behavior. But I played 4 years of football. I ran track. I've been in these environments where athletes were surprised. Hey, someone broke a record, or so-and-so did a good touchdown, or so-and-so got knocked out, or whatever it might be. We've been in these kind of tender places, but it's all very much tough and protected. No one's really allowed to be the centerpiece. Is not the football or the sport, but it's our nervous systems and care for each other. So being used to co-regulation and knowing how to kind of create that for ourselves and others in our families, in our small groups. So the implications, it's not solely on touch, but we find that when touch is moved upon, when singing and landwork is moved upon, we start finding folks, walking more, so their blood pressures are dropping. We find their stress levels drop. So they're a big part of that, visceral fat that can gather around our abdomen and kill us earlier than we want to. A lot of it comes from us being overstressed and dysregulated. And it's normal for us. We just make it through our day. That's Monday for us. It's not like we even know that, but we start noticing all the health benefits, all causes of mortality are improved when we start to create a touch safe place. It's kind of a marker of a new village, really, ultimately.
Right. And it's amazing. I mean, yeah, part of not going in the woods is, like in the Jason movies, what was that, Friday the 13th? We were the first ones like cut down. So it was like, you hear that silent, the silent music. Don't go. So
Yep.
I'm sure that's a trigger. But also it's like, it's interesting what you said about groups of men, because, just watching the movie, I thought about, I was like, oh, I should invite all the brothers that I went to school with. Because our probably touch went around, like you mentioned, dapping each other up, or a quick like pat on the back, but that was around in a kind of an aggressive behavior like basketball, or our intimacy was linked through cracking on each other, just talking about each other. But that was more. I mean, that also in a weird sort of way, and I don't know, I hadn't really talked about my friends about it, but in a weird sort of way, we're also tearing each other down at the same time.
Yeah.
And that was, centered around a sense of intimacy. So it's rather strange how, the fact that gathering brothers together to, which we also don't do, hold hands and talk about our emotional or the things that are happening in our bodies. I find it quite fascinating, and that gets also lethargic in a way where you get an opportunity to share what is inside your body that in essence wants to come out, because that's the only way it can come out, through communing with nature. That energy can dissipate, that negative energy dissipate through talking about it, and then also just connecting with the earth. So I love that.
I just want to highlight a piece that came to my mind where you were sharing is I go in environments, I tease people. Nothing wrong with that banter that we can carry, but I also watch how one of the conscious and unconscious goals, I don't know if it's a goal, but it's an atmosphere created, is that when we tease each other as a baseline of how we kind of show up in spaces, like if it's a cookout or sitting there watching the game, that it makes a space just unsafe enough that we don't actually go into our deep stuff. Because we know that everyone's cracking jokes on other people's stuff. So we just kind of keep ourselves in that isolation, even though we're bonding, we're sharing chips, we're rooting for our team. We might even express some things that were tough, but we don't drop into that tender stage because it's a level of critique or joke that we know is just in the air waiting for us. So we just kind of stay hunkered down. That's why I named that. It doesn't only break us down, but it keeps the room at a certain limitation of real, sincere vulnerability to come out and be present with each other. And so I think that's when a name is one of the things that sits in most casual spaces. Somebody knows how to crack a joke. When someone gets a little too vulnerable, it's almost like the room knows it, and someone cracks a joke and then snaps it out of the way, takes it out of the vulnerable space, because we can't bear to sit with it for an extended period of time without interrupting with that kind of, we call it, always being boy. I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing with you. No, what you're doing is protecting, or not protecting, but you're making them just unsafe enough that I can't quite be present in my hurt, in my tenderness.
Right. And also not to be exposed for their tenderness as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I also thought of is like, then how does the lack of touch affect our friendships and romantic relationships, but also how we show up as dads?
Yeah.
And how has that now, in the men that you've worked with, how has it transformed those, relationships?
This is I just came back from Seattle Black Film Festival, where we taught a workshop, and a father raised his hand and was like, Aaron, I hope you're doing some workshops with fathers, because I'm a father that holds my son, I kiss my children, I love on them. He said, but I feel, we need to do more of this. Like, I want to find other fathers that have similar themes. And so I was going to name that there's a big investment for us to start developing a lot of specific content for Black fathers. But the Black fathers that we've been working with, and how we're trying to design how to think about, is one of the most important bodies of work we're probably going to do here in the Cut Project, because it's one thing to find someone that's been 20 years in a chronic undertouched state and trying to bring them to balance. That's legit work. But what a gift to help a father even before he has his first child, to have a culture, a household that can shape a mind where that young man can grow up and go, I've never known nothing but tender emotional environment. That to me is really important, first of all. But what we've seen so far is wanting to address a couple, because parenting is such an art piece. I mean, being a parent, you're doing an impossible task on the face of it. In our modern day culture, it's no joke to parent in a social media digital era. So in that era, one of the first things we're trying to build for a father, particularly Black fathers, basically applicable to every father that's in the United States, but particularly Black fathers, is to track and make sure that you are a skillful protection curator of the house, not being casually ran by the Black brute narrative, meaning that the music, the films. There's a natural way that the black man can show up in the house, that it doesn't show up in your house unnoticed and under discussed. Doesn't mean you can't watch any movies that have a black man being aggressive. No, there's some great movies that have black brute narratives in the middle. But do we know what we're looking at? Can we have a conversation and go, hey, son, we just watched this movie called Training Day, where Denzel Washington, got an Academy Award and did some phenomenal acting. And maybe if he's like a 15, 18-year-old, he may enjoy Denzel Washington's character. But my son will have the tools from a young age of saying, Dad, I'm aware that Denzel Washington was playing a role of a black brute, that his aggression and his the way he showed up, his aspect on women, and all this was led by the archetype easily identified in this house as a black brute. And we have no shade on Denzel, but aware that the Hollywood gave him his academy for one of the most black brute roles he could play. Now, Denzel's played beautiful characters,
right,
worthy of many accolades. But what do they want to give awards for? The brute, right? But my point is, he did a phenomenal job. But a household where a brother is able to identify the brute, that's one thing we're looking for too. Another thing too is we can't underestimate the modeling. I think there's a way that, I never saw my father cry in my entire life. He died in 2010. So from my birth years, knowing who he was, I never saw him feel or cry. But it's not just the fact that I never heard him cry. My dad was a sweet man. He was a thoughtful man. But did I see a man that was able to create an environment of emotional safety? Like, do I even know how to frame it? So we work with a lot of fathers around that. Like, do you know how to create an emotional environment? What it comes down to, hence our program, is you individually having a comprehensive touch plan that you have worked on your own self. A part of the residue, the perfume, the beautiful smells that come from a body that's been working on touch plan is that one of the things you're able to do is you create an environment, you and your partner, your siblings, your family, that you can create an environment. You're almost like, it becomes a micro facilitator to create an environment where the emotions can come forth skillfully, and that you can cultivate that as normal behavior in your home and ecosystem. And a part of that is this is a big part that will come to, is trauma tracking. One of the things I've done working with, this is back in my mentorship days and mentoring young black men, is I would go, this man is angry. He can't think to me. He can't talk. He can't look me in the eye. He's angry all the time. I said, yes, this is all true facts. But I go, who's his father? What is his story? Who's his grandfather? And if I'm privileged, I will go back as far as I can possibly go and get stories from his mother, from his dad. How was the household when his dad was growing up? How was the household when his grandpa was growing up? What was the economics? Because all these can shape this young man's can't look you in the eye, angry. It's not just that he's upset. It's a trackative lineage. And there's magic in that same tracket as well. There's good speakers and so on and forth. But I just want to name that part of a father's job is to be able to track his own family's trauma story, his partner's own trauma story, and go. Because oftentimes Black women have been our biggest allies in this work. They have been the champions. But also, I have talked to Black women that said, I didn't even know it, but I didn't want to date a man unless he had Black brute attributes. And I was raising my son to be a young Black brute, and I didn't even know it. I just had it as a part of my shaping of what I thought. If my man started crying, I would make fun of him. I would. You aren't strong enough. If he asked for a cuddle, I would not. I'd be attracted to him anymore, because that's not the man I thought I identified as a man. They turn the corner. It's not all Black women. It's a handful of Black women I've talked to that have turned the corner and be like, oh my God, I didn't even know this is part of my lineage, because I grew up in this space. So part of our parentinghood and our father work is on both sides of the family doing a comprehensive trauma tracking, asking specific questions about how the emotions were handled, shared, expressed in our family lineage, and how we want to choose to make our household the same as what we had when I'm growing up, or very different. So we start to be. Some people are shocked, because I've done trauma tracking on myself. They are shocked that they go back almost 60 years in their family lineage and go, no one has asked these questions in 60 years. I'm the first one in 60 years to interrupt this narrative. So part of the father work is being not just like, I want to follow my DNA and find out where I came from in the continent of Africa, or where I came from as far as slavery. It's like, what can I track in my emotional lineage that's possible, that people will share with me, so I have a sense of why I always get angry when I feel disrespected by a woman. Oh wait, there's a lineage in my family that has put women in a certain kind of a place in our space. And when women steps up in our space, it activates me. Or why is a black woman, or why do I feel activated when a man falls into emotions? I feel unsafe because he is now weak. Where does that story come from? Well, I had for the blanket my family or my siblings or my neighborhood, you never could be, right? So these are all kind of trauma trackers that help us build a household that is emotionally and collectively aware of itself and where it's come from, and have some choice in how much of that household we want to keep intact and what parts we want to actually start to erase or work on. And you want to bring in therapists and psychologists and preachers, bring in all the resources, but that's how we're trying to build in a practical container for young Black men to be shaping their home, to be shaping their fatherhood, to be shaping how they show up and have a daily sustainable practice of vulnerability. So, we have daily practice you can do, but there's a way that's the kind of the backdrop in which we build our kind of fathering and our parenting support on.
It's deep, very deep, very deep. And I'm sure just doing that work uncovers just so many different nuances that you don't realize affect you on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So one thing that you didn't touch upon is just yet, and I wanted to make sure we talked about it, is that you talked about listening being the first hug. So why is listening, so important? Because I think, and also kind of in our culture today, it's, you got to be the loudest, or you've got to make sure you voice your opinion to feel that you have a voice. But you kind of use the opposite strategy. Why is that so important?
Just piggybacking off of what I just shared about the trauma tracking, it's so important as a touch activist, that as I bring people through our program, I've realized that America, now let's track this as America, just the whole United States, you can go to UCLA, Stanford, Yale, some of the best colleges in the world, and say, I would like to major in listening. And can I just show me where the listening department is? Show me where people are studying, listening to each other. They look at you like, we don't have a listening department. We have a communications department. We have a math department, a science department, whatever, fill in the blank. But you'll see a lack of investment in our culture across the board of listening, because we're the superpower. We have the biggest nukes. We have the biggest military. We don't listen. We're America. We set the course for things. If things happen in the last couple of years, that's been clear. Now, how does that trickle down to our daily lives? There's a way that we look at social media. Social media is about capturing our attention, controlling our mind's narrative, but it's not about practicing how to get to another human being across the room and go, how about listen to this brother over here across the room? How do I listen to my wife, my children, my own body? How many times we'll have some serious and go, we can't even listen to our own body. The listening muscle is one of the most under-noticed, underrated, under-discussed practice in this country. And it shows politically, health-wise, it shows we're not hearing each other. And one of the things I found when I first started this program, that I didn't know anything. I didn't come in with a PhD in like chronically undertouched narratives. I didn't have big funds behind me. I simply was desperate to keep this brother alive that was in my mentorship space, and his mental health was that concern. And one thing I learned is that when we listen to each other, and when I got serious about practice, unsexy, sit on a chair across from somebody and say, I want to hear your story, and hold attention for them, that muscle, and then eventually reach your hand out and have some contact and listening, I have found has been fundamentally one of the most important skills that I find necessary. I don't care how charismatic, good looking, strong you are. If you're going through any of our programs, we'll see any kind of progress, it's going to be based upon your ability to listen. And so we say, listen's the first hug. You got to understand that first brother in the TEDx talk that we talked about, it took 12 months to get our first side hug. A whole year. I worked every day, Monday through Friday, for 12 months. We get up in the morning, time for breakfast. Breakfast is over. I say, can we talk about touch? Every morning for the entire year before he felt safe enough to come over and give me a side hug. Listening. I wouldn't have got there from talking, hey man, you got to figure this out. It's been 6 months. You got to figure this out. That would not have got him there. It's me saying, who are you? I'm modeling that your emotions and feelings matter. Now, that goes to expand even bigger when we talk about the mentorship. And so you hear that before any brother And the second film actually shows us before any brother actually, we don't get to our workshop and welcome, good morning, say hi to everybody. All right, we're gonna cuddle on 1, 2, 3, grab each other. We don't ever do that at all. We say split up into groups, introduce yourself to each other, tell your life story to each other, share, get to know each other, get to settle in and find out if your nervous system is gonna feel safe enough in this room to even risk holding. And what I have realized is that we are in touch with each other before our hands come out and skin touches. That touch happens when I'm singing with you. As I hear your story, I'm already in touch. That my heart is sending out radius energy around my body, that our energy fields already cross-pollinating well before I reach out and hold your hand. So for me, I have found that, at first I was kind of like, if we ain't touching hands, we ain't got it figured out. And so much of the touch happens before our skin actually touches skin. It's such an energy field of safety. And I find that most people that finally reach out and have their hand being held do so after they know they've been heard, and their no is going to be heard, the yes is going to be heard, the boundaries can be set, that they have autonomy and over their body. And then they're willing to risk, okay, I could be down for touch because I know I have options to step out if I need to. So to me, without listening, my whole work falls apart. And for me, that is why we always say listening is the first hug, because some folks think that we're going to a cuddle party and we might be there for multiple days and no one touches each other. And I know we've done the most important touching. We've been listening to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for that. That was great. So when we're, all about, at least doing the work that can maybe make changes now. I mean, because we are kind of at a point where we need to teach people to fish. So what would be, I guess, I don't want to say symptoms, but how could a brother go inside themselves and feel and say, oh, I may be acting this way because I feel I am under touch? So what would be some of those symptoms that they could kind of go inward and think about, and then what small step could they take to start to heal that?
Totally. I think I'll be careful to tell a brother to look for symptoms. I think our culture is we're so easy to find problems with it. Oh man, brother's messed up because, and you might find some, but I don't want to tell someone that, yeah, if you're scratching too much, you're under touch, or if you hug your girlfriend too many times, you're too much, or if you feeling like, what I would say is, sure, those might all be indications of chronic touch, but I would say first and foremost is start to notice the shape of marketing on your body, right? What I mean by that is that you've been a black man your whole life. I've been my whole life. We kind of know that our genitalia has been marketed to, that black men have been told they have large genitalia. That's a story that's in the air of our identity, that we're athletic, we have big muscles. These are stories that are perpetuated in our bodies, and say, can we just notice these marketing stories that have landed in our bodies and how it has shaped us? One of the reasons why pectoral muscles are big is because we're told, and as an athlete, we got to get our chest big. If there was some kind of marketing narrative where elbows were hip, our elbows will be huge. It's more of just noticing there's a culture shaping us that I want us to get grasp of. Can we get a grasp of how we're being shaped? So before we do any kind of touching, can we just identify what we've been told, and do we believe everything we've been told? And start to have the ability to go close my eyes and go like, do I have any hate or negative energy towards my belly? Where does that come from? Do I have any negative feelings, or I wish my chest was bigger? I wish. Do I have any of these stories in my body going unchecked? And so I would start with being able to identify where mainstream culture, call it social media, call it mainstream marketing, has reached out and told us something. Can we identify going, you know what? That doesn't have to be true. I can just find the barriers. Then what would it mean? And this is so funny because I remember the first time I realized I didn't have anyone to touch me, I said, I want to touch myself. And I kind of laughed because the first thing I thought about touching myself, I thought it's sexual. I never even thought of a platonic way. I've been so conditioned that self-touch was always going to be some kind of joke around something sexual happening, as opposed to what does it mean to tenderly hold my neck? What does it mean to tenderly hold my cheeks? What does it mean to develop a tender practice of what it might feel like to just embody appreciation And so I have this thing called a body tutorial that I use with people and by myself, where I just start with the top of my head, my hair all the way down to my toes. I just go, oh man, what's the story of my hair? Okay, I'm 44 now. I got a little balding happening in the back here. What does that mean? What's that narrative here?
So
Well, I just have a
you're not
forehead of
full
hair.
yet like me.
Yeah, you're not yet. You know what I mean? But it's a good point, right? Because
Yeah.
your hair steps to the bones. You have a story there, though. There's a story of when your hair was there and when it was gone. There's a grief period. So we're saying, can we do it from the top of our head, touching our head, and go down to our face and our gray hairs? I got little grays in my hair that's appeared the last 4 or 5 years, and just notice that. What does that mean? What are the implications of that? And all the way down my chest, all the way down my genitalia, all my thighs, and just get a story of what stories are in this body of mine. Before I find out, am I chronic undertouched, am I sexy, am I old, am I young? Before we get conclusions, can we just notice the bodies we're in with simple? I always say touch. Get some more oils out too, and some nice oil, and just tend to it, love on it, right? Love on that body. And it's not sexual here. This is really a tender. It might be more of a grief ceremony. And I say that because if we can do that, we can start to get clear. Because when I started doing it for the first time, first week or two, I walk into the world, I'll get on social media and see some guy that is ripped up and oiled, is running down the thing because the algorithm knows what to get me. And I'm like, man, I didn't know. How's that guy 45 years old looking at that? I don't know what kind of steroids he's on. I don't know. I can see myself go, wait a minute, go back to my meditation. Oh, wait, Aaron's chest is okay.
Right.
This neck is okay. This goatee, this face, love on his body. Just getting used to separating myself from these powerful images that we're fed on a regular basis that allow me to fall in love or just notice. Maybe not fall in love yet, but start to notice where my body is and where the world actually is. Right. Now that anyone can do that practice. You might be like, Aaron, I can't get past just my head. I can't even go down to my belly or I just can't stand my belly. I can't look at myself. I can't notice it. Don't judge it. Just notice it. So for me, it's about listening to the body. It's like a meditation that says, I want to listen to because first of all, our body's doing amazing things with microplastics and fast food, all things is kicking off every day, keeping us alive, and the cancer is killing every day in our bodies. And if it's not, the able to be in that body self that's a big part. Outside of that, the second thing I always ask people to do after doing a touch for themselves is to sing. And some of y'all be like, what do you mean sing? I don't make nothing to do with anything that's nothing to do with touch. But singing, literally by yourself or with others if you can, but I say start by yourself. Sing in the shower is getting used to fall in love with your voice and the vibrations of music, and ideally, meditatively positive singing, not just like any songs my favorite hit off the radio, but really good mantra singing that reminds me that I'm a full human being, that I'm a tender being, and I think that part of listening to one's voice and falling in love with your voice again, getting used to your voice being heard, tracking where you feel choked up or where you've been told you aren't a singer. What it comes down to is your voice and the vibrations of your voice is one of the most intimate things you're going to use as you build a touch plan for someone else. And so one of the signs of being chronically undertouched in America is not being aware of how much the marketing has shaped our bodies, has shaped our opinions of our bodies, have shaped how we think about other bodies, has shaped how we even talk loving to our bodies. And once you get into that, you can build a beautiful practice of touch plan for the body. You might find that you have insecurity about the pectoral muscle, insecurity about your belly. So when you build a touch plan for yourself, part of your holder will be gently holding that part of your body, that stomach, that chest muscle or the lack thereof, and being loved. Part of that reclaiming that love for that body is activity. It's a touch experience, or even like someone being close by with their hands out, just holding space for you to like be with the grief of what you've been told about yourself and your body. Now, this is a lot of times probably really uncomfortable for a lot of us to hear this statement alone. Like, I ain't gonna be caught in my room and close the door and my partner comes in, I'm in here touching myself with some oils, talking positive to myself. That is the last thing
Right.
I want to be caught doing. And I would say, notice that feeling. Notice that feeling that what I just described made you feel uncomfortable. Well, find what comfort feels good for you, right? Find what was good to be listening to you. But you could do the same thing with your clothes on. I can do it right now in the car as I'm sitting. I can close my eyes and go through that same step without actually visibly touching myself. I'm not ready there. I'm not ready to do that. But just notice that it's basically being able to reclaim, listen to our bodies. But just notice where the discomfort is and maybe why that might be. Because I can say the same thing about, hey, that touch thing feels really uncomfortable, but half of us will feel totally comfortable putting steroids in our bodies, doing harmful things to our bodies just to look a little better for a little bit longer, even if our kidneys or our liver says no to it. We'll do it to look a little better in front of the mirror, but we're afraid to hold each other. That's why I named that. Like I played football and been knocked almost unconscious, got back up and like, this is normal, this is cool. But to sit and to hold myself tenderly, I'm like, this is uncomfortable. I can't get my oils out. You can bench 400 pounds. You can squat. Some brothers can squat 800 pounds, but they can't sit, right? I'm not going to set you up to be a competition, but just notice that it's easier to like do this aggressive behavior, but it's so hard to sit and be tender with your body. You know what I mean? But just notice that. That we'll look. Well, I can't wait to be able to squat 600 pounds. Well, you ain't gonna find me touching myself in the oils and thinking good about my chest and my body. I just want to notice that that's the condition. That's the condition that we want to rewrite. So I always say it's a lot that the tender touch is the biggest lift.
Right.
Tender is the biggest lift. Yeah.
It's so awesome that you mentioned that, because I found myself, and it's just last night, there was it was an Instagram video that I watched, and it was about, of course, being a man of a certain age, things start to change, and it's like, well, what what does it represent? So it was and it goes right to that, too. If you're 50 and over, how you can change your body is, this military, it was called militaristic exercise, and they had guys in army fatigues, no shirt on, and I was like, I almost watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
And only because I know it's an app and I'd end up paying for it, I didn't do it, but I still sat and watched the whole thing. It was like, yeah,
right.
And so
it's so easy.
So easy.
Me too.
So easy.
Yeah.
To not even to think about being tender with your body.
Yes.
And that your body is okay the way it is. I mean, sure. and for women, they have found a way to get past that. Maybe because they go through childbirth and changes, in the beginning. So that's great. And then a couple more things. By doing this work, how do you feel it will change our communities?
I have a thesis that I'm gonna take to my grave and beyond, is that if I had a magic wand and a portion of these practices were acted upon in most communities, it would put the prison industrial industry at risk of closing. We would not need the amount of violent police monitoring and control of Black ecosystems. They're like, we have been called in forever. They're self-healing. They don't even need the amount of, we never needed it, but there's a way that they can justify it. There's a level of casual violence that we get to throw around in our entertainment and in our communities that would drop dramatically. I think the life expectancy of Black men would definitely shift. I feel the economics would shift. I think there's a way that there's, they call it the Black tax, and there's many ways that oppression can interrupt our economics. But one of the expensive Black taxes are the ways that Black folks have internalized these trauma stories and have cost us within our own communities. The amount of relationships that have ended in death and violence because the man had not done his work or has not an opportunity to do his work, to not have violence towards children and women. The level of businesses that benefit, the amount of money that's made off of men striving, and I'm tracking myself, as you mentioned really well earlier, advertising, how many times men have taken drugs or done an exercise or done some harm to their body just to keep the Black brute narrative intact in their body, as opposed to pausing, going, this is actually, sure, I will walk, I will eat more lean food, whatever I can do, but I'm fine where I'm at. I don't need a 4-inch greased up 2% body fat chest to become my full self. I can be my full self right here. And I think there's also a place of creativity, and because I work with young Black men, so inevitably we lose a couple through violence, to get shot or get suicide or drug overdose. I deal with this. I'm in the trenches and the level we lose brothers. And there's a brother I lost. I won't think of his name right now, but he lost just a couple of years ago. And this brother has so many dreams, so many desires, so many things he wanted to create that got snuffed out because of this carnage. And I know this is happening on a daily basis, that so much talent and magic is being snuffed out because this narrative is being pushed through our culture. And the cost is silent, because we don't even know what genius brilliance is being lost at the blade of the unchecked Black brute wielding through our community. So for me, I see a emotional renaissance that will build economics, that will build safety, that will build upward mobility and collective village that I think would shock the country and landscape I know of right now. And so for me, that's why I feel like it happens these micro moments. And I think only scaled is tremendous. And I think for me, it's not about touch, but it's about Black resilience. When I think about the Tulsa massacre that happened there in Oklahoma, and I think about them having rebuilt that community within 10 years, and that they were sitting through Oklahoma winters in tents, rebuilding their community after it was burned to the ground by the massacre that happened, and that they were thriving at a higher economic bracket, at a higher economic space after the massacre, and that really many things contributed to dismantling it, but it was a separation of Black magic and brilliance that got fragmented enough that it's harder for us to create that kind of concentrated magic. And so for me, there's not to get too far into the weeds here, but just noticing that that is in our collective culture. I see it in micro moments all around us, but I do see this fragmentation of community that is by design of our modern day culture that I find will start to repair itself. And
Mm.
I find when you find a unified collective mind of any culture, but particularly Black culture in America, it is a beautiful thing to see. And that's what I feel is possible when we build these Black villages together of folks, is that there's a non-punitive, non-violent village structure that can birth generations of resource and nourishment.
Well, Aaron, that's a great way to kind of close out this part. This is really awesome. I have one more question, but before I get to that, I'd love for anyone that's listening and wants to hear more about your work or possibly join one of your wonderful workshops, how could they find you?
Yeah, cutproject.org is our website where you can find our newsletter. You can sign up for our material. And I would say that we're about to launch, I believe it's coming out this month. Just got my newsletter of our TAP training program. And we have space for full ride scholarships for at least 5 brothers that might want to, anyone that's African heritage, we're prioritizing Black men, that can get a full ride scholarship into our program this year. We got a grant that's going to cover that for this year. Next year, that may not be available. So I just want to encourage brothers, if they want to put in their application, tell their story, that they can qualify for our grant and our scholarship to be a touch activist. And my goal ultimately is to really do the ecosystem of grant writing, that we can hire some full-time touch activists that will travel the country and lead this work. And so that's also on the flip side. So if they want to join us, cutproject.org, sign up for our newsletter, apply for our TAP program, and we can get those scholarships out to folks, and they can join our training program. And if they get through that program, it goes well for them, we can totally, really consider them to be a part of our ecosystem going forward and leading this work in the country.
That's so awesome, because I think I know someone that I'm going to recommend.
Oh,
I think
please.
This brother, he was one of my actual mentees, and I think he maybe would have benefited in the past. I'm sure if you get a chance to meet, he would tell you his story. So
please,
I appreciate all that you've done, and I really enjoyed the Cut Project. I think it's really awesome work, and I think it's going to be so transformative within the community. So before we go, this question I have is always a surprise. I like to not let people know because I want to hear a real world response. But we do so much for our communities and our families, and this may not necessarily be for you because you're very introspective, but we don't really necessarily think about what's going on in our minds, collective minds and bodies. But the question I like to end with is, as a Black man, how are you feeling?
My mother passed away last September, and that was my last living parent. And she had a long battle with strokes and heart failure that went on for almost 13 years. So that wasn't easy to see it coming, but I will say that there's something special about having 2 parents that were extraordinary that are no longer on the earth, that not only sobers you, but it inspires you to be about your good work in the world. And so I feel so honored that I get to lead this work, and this is my full-time job. Like, I get my full income, my full life design doing this work. That feels like the biggest gift I ever could have. But I would also say that that's possible because specifically I had 2 parents that prepared me for this work, my best education. So I feel like I'm the most blessed I've ever felt. I've been very much an examination of this exact question of how am I feeling, what's going through my body right now. As I'm turning, my birthday is May 30th, so my birthday. So anytime my birthday comes around, I get to go like, how has my year has been? What has been actual nourishing? And I can tell you, and this is strange to say, in so many ways, I've had a really good life thus far, but specifically the last 3 years have been the best 3 years of my already extraordinary life. And I feel like it's possible to even get better. And there's something that feels almost guilty about that much pleasure in such a very, very politically uncertain times. Gas is like, we're in California, gas is like $6+ a gallon. These are all things that would normally spin me into some kind of place of complete depression or concern. But I'm telling you right now, I am blessed beyond words, and it feels like I'm learning how to be comfortable with the level of care and holding by my critical mass of people around me. And that feels like a special thing. And in that, I feel responsibility to be about my good work because of that. And I feel honored, and I've had some dark days. Burying your mother is not a good day, but there's something about being able to even have time to grieve. I took a month to grieve my mother. None of my siblings had that kind of extra time to take time off to grieve their mom, right? But I have my own life design. I can say, I'm not going to work for 3.5 weeks. I'm going to sit and be in my grief. That level of sadness space has allowed me to come out of that space with so much more groundedness. So I feel eerily blessed, especially coming from a raised poor environment where time off was just a myth. I feel really nourished right now, and I feel honored because of that.
Well, Aaron, that's what a great way to end. Especially on this Mother's Day, honoring your mom and your family, yes. and honoring your mom through your work, because
yes,
what goodness or whatever she passed down through her DNA is in you, and yes. You are continuing that. So thank you. So hold on.
Thank you.
Yeah, hold on just a bit.
Yes.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this wonderful, transformative podcast today. And if you don't do anything else this day or tomorrow or at the end of the day, just take that time to honor yourself, your body, and be proud and glad about what has been created organically. Yes, we go through changes, but it's all good. And I learned something today, because I'm going to honor that. There will be no militaristic push-ups for me. So this is Keith Dent from the Black Men Speak podcast. Peace and love.